there he is on the left side of the mountain, the praying monk. He's on his knees. He's on his knees facing the mountain. He's kind of got a hunchback on the back of his back, okay, looking at the mountain. Yeah, he sticks out like a sore thumb right now. He really does. And he is, of course, famous because he's great at sunset and sunrise. If you've got a house around here for sale on the market, and from your backyard by the swimming pool, you've got a view at sunset and sunrise of the praying monk, when your guests are there for cocktails or whatever, you can probably add a chunk of change to the price of your house, just because people love to have the praying monk as part of their atmosphere, so to speak, that they talk about. Now this, as we circle, we're coming back into Paradise Valley. Here on the left you can see a lot of the beautiful homes. I mean, some of them look like hotels up here, but they're actually private homes. And this section over here, the foothills of Camelback Mountain, we're now circling around again towards the back side of it. The praying monk will be right up in front of us, but he looks better from the side than he does from the back. But this is another favorite hiking area up here. This is called Echo Canyon back in here. Now this is kind of tough terrain to climb because it's very rocky and steep. So every once in a while we end up having to send the helicopters in to rescue somebody off the top because they get up and they can't get down. So that does occasionally happen. Now as we round the bend here, we'll go up to Lincoln and take a left, John, but this area over in here, still part of Paradise Valley, is where a fellow lives. Some of you may have heard of his name. Got a home over here. He's passed away now. His name was Barry M. Goldwater. Ran for the presidency in '64, I think it was, against Gerald Ford.
Lyndon Johnson.
Johnson. Yep. Well, he's a native of Arizona. He was born and raised here. And he had a couple of hobbies that really benefited him in the long run, as it turned out, because he didn't grow up aiming to be a politician. But one of them was photography. He loved photography. He traveled this state, you know, forwards, backwards, upside down, and sideways. He knew all the Native Americans, all the chiefs, all the cattle barons, all the politicians. And he traveled extensively doing fabulous photography. And he was Arizona's biggest fan. He really did love Arizona. And he also collected, he had a fabulous kachina. They closed those down and built schools out close to the reservations or on the reservations. This one operated for 99 years. I think it was the longest operating one. Then they finally closed it down and they divided the land up. Part of it went to the Native Americans for parks. They also got a huge fund that is distributed amongst the tribes here in Arizona. Piece right on the main road will go to a developer for a high-rise probably, and the Veterans Hospital got a big chunk of it to expand the VA hospital, but this was like 7 years in court battle once that decision was made. And this is all still part of it right here, and that's the VA hospital, the white buildings you see over there towards the left. And they have a lot of activities for the Native Americans at the park here for the big section that they have set up. Now, some of you, I don't know if you've even thought about it, but as we go along, you may notice this is the only area you're seeing the high-rise buildings in. In the early years when Phoenix zoning was going into place, people moved out here for the sunset and the sunrise and the wide open spaces. They did not want New York City. So, you are allowed to build high-rise buildings only within 7 blocks east or west of Central Avenue. Woo, little tree branch there. By and large, that has held. Over the years, occasionally we see an exception. I'm not sure who knew whose grandson that knew their uncle that knew their aunt that knew however that goes, but you know, something got through. But basically, this is where all the high rises are. The financial district, title companies, banks, savings and loans, stock brokerage firms, that type of thing. The building, cream-colored building you see coming right up here on the left corner, the big tall one, cream-colored, that is the old IBM International Business Machine headquarters building for many years. Of course, that was the beginning of the computer world. Does anybody remember key punch machines and the key punch cards that they used in the beginnings of the computer world? You would type it in, usually some gal, I was one of those, would type it in and it would punch holes in the card. Then you'd put it through a machinery that would read those holes alphabetically or numerically to print out the information. That was their building. Does anybody remember those key punch cards, what they looked like? Look at the front of this building as we go by. I think that is just a hoot. Now on the light stanchions that we see along Central Avenue, they just had this beautification of Central Avenue project about, I don't know, maybe 11 years ago, and they tore this whole thing up. The light rail was not here, of course, and laid red brick down the middle and put all of these, they had Native Americans come in and create these medallions on these light stanchions that you see here. 3 Native Americans came in to depict parts of their culture. Then they came in and tore the whole red brick part of the road up to put the light rail system in, so much for that idea. Now on the right coming up is Park Central Mall. This was our very first shopping mall here in the valley in Phoenix. And that was, as I said, the downtown really started dying quickly after that. People were not going downtown anymore, and it just deteriorated. It's making a good comeback now. This is now used as St. Joseph's Hospital. All the big white buildings you see over there to the right are part of the big St. Joseph's Hospital complex. They took this over and used it for meeting rooms, clinics, and that type of thing. Now as we come up to this light, we'll slow down as best we can. On the left-hand side of the road over there, the second as we get past the light rail pickup station here, behind the palm trees, you'll see on the left a big statue of a Native American sitting down, and as we see from the side, you're going to see he's playing a flute, an Indian flute. It's called the Indian Flute Player, and it's a sculpting by Doug Hyde, who's a very famous sculptor, especially out here in the Southwest. It is a tribute to the 400 young Native American men, Navajos basically, who were inducted during World War II to become what is known as the Navajo Code Talkers. And the Japanese, of course, before the war started, many of them had lived here, been educated here, spent lots of time. They knew our idioms, they knew our language, they knew our people. They broke our military codes left and right, one after the other. They inducted the young men into the military. Somebody got the bright idea that Navajo language had never been written. It's a very difficult language. They inducted the 400 young men in, taught them military code, shipped them overseas. They communicated with each other, interpreted to their local commanders. And that, many people feel, was the beginning of the turning of the war. The Japanese never broke that code. After the war was over, they didn't reveal what the code was because they fully intended to use it again if, heaven forbid, it would have been necessary. But then they divulged in mid-1960s what it was, because that was when the Navajos started writing their language. And then, of course, it became useless as far as a military code would have gone. Now this right here, coming up on the left-hand side, is the Heard Museum. I mentioned this is a Native American museum. And the Heards, Mr. and Mrs. Dwight Heard, lived here in the valley. On the left, where the big pink high-rise condo is at, was actually where their house was at. And they traveled extensively, collected Native American arts and cultural things. They were big fans of this. This was the love of their life. They'd come back and they'd share with everybody all this fabulous stuff. And somebody finally said, you know, you really ought to get a place to put all this. So they built the then Little Heard Museum. What we see here now is about 3.5 times the size of what they'd originally built over here. knocked my sound off. Wish you could do that. Great. I had my back turned. I would have missed the whole thing because I had my back turned. I am glad we missed the whole thing also. Anyway, so they expanded the Heard Museum to go to cover all of their items. They put the art library. I mean, it is, even the windows have coverings. Everything moves to deflect the sun's rays so it doesn't come in because we have such harsh sunshine here. But as we're going up this street, we're coming to a little bridge. It's called the Deck, and on both sides they refer to this as the Deck Park. You'll see a big park area to the right and to the left, and you are totally unaware of what is underneath of us on the bridge, under the bridge. This was created because the city announced about, I don't know, 13, 14 years ago to the residents around here in the area that they were putting Interstate Freeway 10 through their neighborhood. And the folks said, I don't think so. And so the battle was on. They finally, after 5 or 6 years, they finally settled out and said, okay, you can do it, but we don't want to see it and we don't want to hear it. So they built this park area with a deck on it, and there's a big long tunnel that goes underneath as it connects out to Interstate 10 on the outskirts away from the main city area. Now we can slow just a bit here, John. We're in the downtown part of Phoenix, the main part. This was where the thriving part of the community was at. On the left-hand side, you'll see a big grayish building with a big tower going up on it on the left. This is the old Westward Ho Hotel. For 32 years, this was the only high-rise building in the city. And until the Biltmore was built, this was the hotel that everybody went to. This is where all the shindigs went on. All the who's who came to the old Westward Ho. The cattle barons met at the bar, belly up to the bar. They did their cattle deals there. No attorneys, you know, drink or 2 or 3 or 4 and a handshake, and it was all taken care of. That's the way it was. On this side you see ASU, that's the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism. This is a new, just in place, satellite campus for Arizona State University in Tempe, which we'll see part of. The big net you see up there hanging is an art piece, actually. To me it looks like a big basketball net, kind of, sort of, but modern day art. And here on the left is where the main city bus transit station is. And you can see the light rail right here on the left, connects right by it. It stops here so people can use any bus practically in the city that they need. They can catch it here from the light rail system to continue on to the outskirts of where they're coming or going to. We've got about 22 miles of it now. Starts on the west, comes up here to the main part of downtown, and then heads over to the east towards Scottsdale and Tempe. They will, if it's as successful as we hope it is, they will expand on that later. This down here, downtown area, is going to be, this is the U.S. Federal Courts building on the right-hand side. Again, mostly legal offices, county offices, state, municipal offices, banks, title and loans, stock brokerage firms, that type of thing. Very little residential, but this is all, most of it is new, and we actually do have people living down here now, and shopping down here. Now as we turn the corner here, on this left-hand corner, this was the main part of downtown area. It's all been demolished, of course, and these are all new buildings. They've just completed, they're still building on the left corner as we go around here. This one that says Five Guys, they just completed that part about a month or so ago. And you'll see a lot of the big high-rises. These are all part of the new expansion. And as we go around the corner here, I want you to notice this building on the left-hand corner that we go around. This is the old Maricopa County Courthouse. And this is very famous because, not that it's happened to you, but some of you may be familiar with the fact that the last time you got arrested as the officer was putting your handcuffs on, you should have heard him say something like, "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say may and will be held against you in a court of law." Your Miranda rights was heard at the old courthouse here. This is our brand new city hall. So you'll see really good things that have come in downtown here that are revitalizing this downtown community. This on the right is our brand new Phoenix Municipal Courts Complex building. That is all new. And on this corner on the right-hand side is the Dodge Theater. This is a center in the downtown Phoenix area for a lot of the big-name entertainment that comes into town. Although we have some other theaters also. This building on the left with all this glass that you see here is the Sandra Day O'Connor Courts building. Sandra Day O'Connor, of course, was the first female justice on the Supreme Court bench. She was born and raised in Arizona. She was a cowgirl. Folks had a little ranch up northeast part of the state. I'm sure she never dreamed where she was going to end up at as a Supreme Court justice. And she stepped down from the bench, a little over 2 years ago, I think now. Her family, they were still here, and she was back and forth, but her husband had developed Alzheimer's very badly. So she decided it was time to spend more time for another. And as we start this curve around, you'll see the flagpoles right here coming up on the left. And there's a big anchor right by the bottom of the flagpoles here. That is an anchor from the USS Arizona battleship, which was sunk at Pearl Harbor, of course, 1941. The distance from the anchor to the front door of the Capitol is the exact length of the USS Arizona. This is our latest memorial right here on the left, if we can slow down, John. The big circle you see right here, that was commemorated this last September. This is in memory of the 9/11 disaster that happened when the planes flew into the towers, of course. And it's interesting, they've got wording cut out in the top of that round circular sphere. As the sun shines down and changes directions, it changes the verbiage for you to read about the episodes that went on that day. It's a great park. You can spend 2 or 3 hours in there getting a fantastic education. Day like today, it's nice because it's cool out. Middle of the summer, it's a little toasty. Now this is the State Capitol Complex. We're going to pull around here, park up in front. There'll be 2 buildings that face the courtyard, the House and the Senate buildings. Now just to give you a minute or two of background, we were not admitted as a state to the Union until 1912. We were called the baby state.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice, yeah. So all these trophies. State Museum. Yeah, that's
beautiful. Wow.
it's silver. Great. Okay. It's over there. Painting. Battleship. State symbols.
talk about him later on, but the old cemetery fell into disrepair in years past. Nobody was taking care of it. They knew they were developing this as what we call Government Row area. Past the backside of the old Maricopa County Historical Building, the one on the left coming up, this is where I said the Miranda case was heard at, coming up here. Now, if you look up on the top 2 stories up there, the windows have those wrought iron bars around them, on them. That used to be, that was our jail up there on the top 2 stories. Unfortunately, our jail population no longer fits in those 2 little floors up there. We have a big jail now with a rather notorious sheriff out here. Sheriff Joe Arpaio, exactly. Yeah.
Can I get to meet him?
Huh?
Can I get to meet him?
I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be out today or not. He's probably out rounding up illegals, so. Yeah, there's a lot of controversy going on with that, of course.
He's from Massachusetts.
Is he from originally? I didn't know that he's from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, he started, if some of you aren't familiar, he's the one that started this. He in the early days, what he did was he made the inmates all wear pink boxer undershorts. They still have it, yeah, they do. Bologna sandwiches for lunch once in a while. They have their own farm. A lot of them work out on the farm for produce. They took over some of the animal shelter places. The guys and gals get to work there, which they love. And they have operated those shelters at 20% of what the city had been operating them for. Then he cut out their TV. Found out he had to have. Now this is our U.S. Airways Center complex over here to the right. This is home to our Phoenix Suns professional basketball team. Many other venues, of course, go on here at the U.S. Airways Center. But this was one of the big things that started the revitalization of the downtown area. U.S. Airways came in, our professional baseball team called the Diamondbacks. Now, as we go by, I'm trying to see those about 10, 11 years ago. You couldn't give them away. Now I understand they've all been sold. There's a lot of activity going on here for residential. Science Center over here on the left. And this part here on the left coming up, we're going to sneak in here for just a couple quick minutes, is the old Heritage Square. This is where some of the old authentic homes from the late 1800s, early 1900s have been brought in, refurbished, trying to retain them. So we've got some of the flavor of the past. That's right, okay. We'll try to get up here past the palm tree and pull in. How rude, this gentleman with his truck just took my parking space. I should have put my name on. Oh, I can see one of the docents is out on the porch of that big house right there in the corner. She'll be dressed in period costume, long black skirt, and, you know, that type. They're the volunteer guides, and that is called, that was the, at one time this was the largest high school campus in the United States. My 3 older brothers, they told me about Lover's Lane, all went to school here, and by the time I came along and walked in the door, they read my last name, and I could see the blood drain out of the face of the professor. But actually, they transferred me right out. I never knew if that was because of what I did or said, but a new high school had opened up on the west side, which is where I live, so I actually never got to spend much time going at Phoenix Union. But ASU took this over. They started refurbishing it. They were going to use it for offices. This is now going to be the brand new medical school. So they now have the business campus where the old Mercado Spanish Village used to be. They're taking over this whole campus for medical nurses and doctors. They have the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism, which we saw the front part of it before. It's right over here to the left, the kind of the wooden building you see across the block there. And all those tall buildings you see there are residential. So that's for the student populations, for the professors, for people that are now living and working downtown. And this is still some of the old neighborhood. Okay, so here you can see, these are not the glorious, glamorous, even the standard run-of-the-mill. This is very much the old part. This is still very much on the lower economic level. Expansion and renovation will eventually take place. It just once the downtown area dies and goes to heaven, you know it takes a lot of work and a long time to start revitalizing. There's his big hump on his back, his long neck slopes down, and then he's got a rocky prominence where his ears and his skull starts at, and then there'll be a big long slope, which would be his snout, leading down to the end of his nose. I didn't make this up. Well, now a little bit about Lord Darrell Dupa. This is the guy that was buried in the old cemetery I said. He was responsible for naming Phoenix. He came across the pond from Kent, England, which is where he was born. He came from a family of landed gentry. When the parents were no longer able to handle the estates or were no longer there, as was the custom, usually the eldest son would take over those responsibilities, and there were two boys. Lord Darrell Dupa was the youngest son. So, as was the custom, he was set off on his way with a stipend to do whatever he's going to do. He chose to come across the pond, and he ended up here in Arizona, of all places. And he jolly well stuck out like a sore thumb, of course, because first he had this accent. Secondly, he was highly educated. He could speak 5 languages fluently. He could quote you Shakespeare from morning till night. He traveled around with a couple of mules loaded with books, his own little library. He touted around with him as he traveled. And he was a lover and an avid fan of mythology, Greek mythology. So when the citizens started meeting here in the valley, he was here, got involved with the group, coming up for a name for this community that was growing. Amongst other things offered, he was the one that told them and shared with them the story about the famous Phoenix bird, the legend of the Phoenix bird. To give you background on this, there are numerous sites of Native American, old, prehistoric Indian dwellings here in the valley. They believe we probably had one of the, if not the largest Native American population in this valley, centralized than in any other part of the states. The Hohokam, those who have gone before, they were here from 300 BC, disappeared about the 1450s AD. We don't know why. Drought, we've had 20-year droughts here. Pestilence, infighting, any number of reasons. They could have dispersed and left. We find their ruins, their community clubs that the Wrigleys used to own. We have had spring training here for many years, but in the last couple of years it's grown to 14 teams. And they all come out here. We have numerous of these little stadiums around. This is home to the Oakland A's. This is their stadium when they come here for the month of March for spring training. And all of the clubs, they have, as I said, like a number of stadiums around the valley here, and they play off against each other, starting the last week in February into the first week of April. It's a good long day within a very short distance, someplace around the valley. There's 2 or 3 games going on, so it's a big fun thing that goes on here. This actually kind of has become a bird sanctuary over the years. I mean, they didn't plan that to happen, but as we get up here on the freeway, we're going to